Hello, everyone. Welcome to Security at Work. My name is Charles Theodore Monk, and I will be your presenter today. For those of you who can hear me, please go ahead and let me know in the chat by saying hello, or you could also say, yes, I can hear you, and that way I can you can hear me because let's be honest, it will be a little difficult for you guys to understand everything I'm trying to say if you cannot hear me. All right, so I will give about another 30 seconds to maybe a minute for those who are still coming into this presentation because I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. So for those of you who are here on time, I appreciate you guys, but let's give some time for other people to come in just in case they are running a little bit late. All right. So for those of you guys who are here already, I want to encourage you, please maybe get a notepad and a piece of paper and take down some notes. Or you can take down notes on your mobile device, but I encourage you to do this. That way, you will have time to be able to take down notes of things you find interesting and things that you could be able to practice when you are on your own. All right, because that's something you're going to hear me say throughout this presentation is the importance of practice, right? We don't want information coming in this ear and coming out the other. We want all the information we learn to be able to make us better speakers and just help us to become better overall at our skills. All right. So it seems like everyone who is here now has said something in the chat. Let me do a little breakdown of what we are going to discuss in today's presentation. So, obviously, based on the title, we're going to be talking about security at the workplace. We're going to be talking about some important vocabulary related to security at your work. We're also going to talk about a lot of very famous stories about security at the workplace and how we can learn from those and their mistakes. And we're going to talk about some very helpful tips and some very good ways for us to be able to know how or why do we need security at work. All right, so we're gonna go on for about a half hour, so I'm gonna do my absolute best to get you guys out of here at that 30-minute mark because I do want to be mindful of your time. But I am super thankful for each and every one of you who have come into this presentation. Trust me, you will learn something in this presentation. All right, now there is a chat box here that I highly encourage you guys to use throughout the presentation. If there's something you want to say, something you want to ask, or something you just simply want to write down. But if it is something you want to ask, whether that's a question or something along those lines, please save that for the end because there will be a time where I can answer any questions you guys may have. Right? There will be a Q&A section where you guys can ask me a question during that portion and I will do my best to answer it. All right? So let me also tell you about some my personal background. So I am TEFL certified with my 160 hours. So that's like the best certification you could get in that program. And I've been teaching for about a year. And something that is really important for me personally is security at my work, right? Because I obviously work is how I keep my livelihood, right? Work is how we all keep our livelihood, how we pay our bills, how we're able to travel, basically how we earn money, right? And it's super important that we're safe here because we want to not be able to get in trouble, whether that's losing our identity, losing money, losing some information about ourselves, right? So it's super important to know about security at your workplace. So let's get started and basically answer that question. What is this? What is security at your workplace? So workplace security simply talks about workplace conditions that affects your well-being and it also affects your health. All right, so this means that we're talking about your workplace conditions. So workplace security, like we said, is your work conditions. You have to make sure if you have good workplace conditions, right? You have good conditions such as having clean place, not having to smell bad stuff, having good resources there, and basically having a good, nice place to be able to work. And we also talked about the effect on your well being and your health, right? Your well-being is simply how you're able to function, whether you can function in a good capacity or a bad capacity. And your health obviously means if you are healthy and being able to live healthy lifestyle because of where you work. All right. So this begs to answer the question. I mean, ask the question, not answer the question. Is workplace security important to you? All right. So go ahead and let me know in the chat. Is workplace security important to you? If so, why? Right. For me, like I mentioned before, working is how you make your income. It's how you're able to provide for your basic needs and necessities of life, right? So go ahead and let me know, in your opinion, is workplace security important for you? Or do you simply just not care about your workplace security, and as long as you get money, that is all you care about, right? It's very different opinions on this topic, but go ahead and let me know. What do you think about this topic? All right, so go ahead and use the chat, guys, and let me know. That way, we can kind of get an understanding of what people in this presentation are thinking about or are expecting about when it comes down to workplace security. All right, so I'll give you guys time to do that. But while you do that, I will talk about some very interesting vocab that we're going to be using throughout this presentation. All right, so number one is CCTV. Whenever we talk about CCTV, it stands for closed circuit television or simply video surveillance. All right. So if you go in a normal workplace or in a lot of areas and you see cameras recording people's activities such as that, that is considered CCTV, closed circuit television. All right. Now, next one, a firewall. What is a firewall? So a firewall is simply a divider between trusted networks and untrusted networks. And for example, on the internet, right? So if we have a firewall, it keeps the division between good networks that will be good for us and bad networks that will be bad for us, all right? So for those of you taking down notes, go ahead and write this information down because there will be a portion where we will use these vocabulary terms later on in this presentation. All right, so remember, CCTV is closed circuit television or simply video surveillance, while firewall is a divider between trusted networks and untrusted networks. It keeps the good in the good and the bad with the bad. All right, now next one. First term is a password, and most of us know passwords. And passwords simply are characters used to verify the identity of a user, right? So maybe if you're at work and you have your own computer and you have a password in order to get into that computer, right? You have to be able to put in a good or the certain amount of characters in the proper order, proper capitalization in order for you to access your accounts. For example, Facebook, Instagram, emails, things like that all require passwords so that all your personal information can remain safe, that people cannot just access it, right? But they need the proper password in order to access that kind of information, right? And that's huge. For me, it's super important to have a good password so that people cannot access my private information. Because let's be honest, we don't want people snooping around in our private information because, like it mentions in what we're talking about, it's private, right? It's my information. You don't need to hear about it, all right? Now, a PIN. A PIN is also another way you could talk about a password, but it's specific. It's a personal identification number. So for example, when you talk about a PIN, you can use this when we're talking about an ATM, right? So an automated machine where you go to withdraw money or simply do some banking, right? You have to put in a group of numbers in the proper order for you to be able to access your account, right? That is a PIN. So the difference with passwords and PIN, passwords can include letters, periods, commas, punctuation marks, a bunch of random things. They're characters, right? While a PIN is a group of numbers in a specific order, all right? So remember the difference. Passwords can involve all kinds of characters, while PINs only talk about numbers, all right? Now, let's tackle the last one we're going to talk about on this slide, and that is a safety procedure. So a safety procedure is a step-by-step action to guarantee safety, right? It is a procedure that you do this, you do this, then you do this in order to make sure you will have safe processing, right? For example, when you make a business or when you make a online website, there are safety procedures you have to conduct in order for your business or for your webpage to become legit, so that you can have step-by-step actions to guarantee the safety of your users or of your customers or consumers, right? So when it comes down to safety procedure, you have to start at point A, then go to point B, go to point C, and so on and so forth until you reach the good amount or the guaranteed amount in order to guarantee the safety for your users. All right, so you're gonna hear these terms all throughout this presentation, guys. So for those of you who already know this, great for you guys. But if you don't know this, I encourage you take down those notes or do your absolute best to remember this information. All right, so now, we're going to be talking about some of the most famous security breaches in the past few years, all right, and how they affected and what was the outcome of these security breaches, all right? So, security breach number one is Yahoo, and this occurred from 2013 to 2014. All right, so basically, what happened is Yahoo is a browsing page, and they do also provide with email and things like that. So people had a lot of personal information along those lines stored up in this browser, right? But it did lead to a hack that led to people's names coming out, some email addresses coming out, the date of birth of a lot of people, and telephone numbers of a lot of people as well. And it affected around 3 billion users or 3 billion accounts. That is a lot of people. And actually, you may be asking, what's so significant when a person's name, email address, date of birth, and telephone number can get leaked? All right, so let me tell you why losing this kind of information to hackers or certain kinds of things are super, super deadly, and not deadly, but super, super dangerous for you to encounter. All right, well, when you lose your name, obviously your name is special to you, right? Your name is your name. It's not anybody else's name. So you could get led to having things such as identity fraud, right? People could open bank accounts, make fake IDs, could do a bunch of stuff once they have access to your name, right? If they don't have access that is given to them to your name, that could be very dangerous for you, right? So obviously, when the people using Yahoo lost their names information, that is something that is very concerning for a lot of people, all right? Now, email address. Obviously, a lot of important stuff is done during emails, right? A lot of people use it for work. People use it to communicate with each other. And basically, your email address is yours because you have private information going from your email address to other people's email addresses. That obviously could lead to you losing some more private information, not just your email address, but you could lose a bunch of other of your private information stored up in your email addresses. And the date of birth, obviously, your date of birth is not just unique to yourself. There are other people born on the same day and same date as you. But when you can combine somebody's name, email address, and date of birth, that could actually get some people into several accounts run by you. For example, your Facebook, Instagram, a lot of social medias rely on a person's name, email address, and date of birth. So when this is given out, obviously it could lead to you losing more of your personal information, right? And that's what happens with most security breaches, is people end up losing a lot of their more of their personal information, all right? And obviously, telephone numbers, your telephone number is yours, right? You use it to communicate with other people. If people who you do not know or people who you simply don't communicate with have access to your telephone number, it would also lead to a lot of negatives, right? When you affect 3 billion accounts or 3 billion users, that is a good portion of the population. So obviously, since then, Yahoo has never been the same. They've gone through rebranding, and simply the company has never been able to recover from this security breach of their company. All right. Now let's slide on to the second example of what we're going to be talking about today of the companies, and that's the Marriott International. And the Marriott International is obviously known as one of the most prestigious hotels and lounging areas that people can use when traveling, all right? And obviously, when people travel and they book hotels, they give some very personal information in order to refer or to keep their room as their room, right? So when this happened, it happened during 2014 all the way to 2018, which is just last year. People lost their names, their contact information, passport information, their credit card numbers, and expiration dates. Now, we already discussed why it's so vital to not lose your own name and your contact information when it comes down to hacks. But when it comes down to your passport number, that is how somebody could fake your passport and put, for example, their face on it and use your passport to travel country to country, even though they are not from the country you are from, right? So obviously that would lead to a lot of legal issues that you would have to deal with. And honestly, one of the most scary things about getting hacked is losing your credit card, debit card numbers, and expiration dates. You may be asking why? Well, simply if somebody has access to all of this information, right? Your name, contact information, passport number, credit card numbers, and expiration dates, they can simply use the internet and use all of your information, pay for things, buy things, travel without your consent, and you could honestly lose a lot of money, and obviously there would be a lot of legal issues you would have to deal with, right? So the Marriott International did have to recover from this. While the Marriott hotels are still very good, obviously this did a good damage to their reputation once the security was breached, all right? Now, we're going to talk about Equifax. Equifax is a different company that was used in the financial area, all right? Now, when they got hacked, it occurred in 2017, and that led to these informations being leaked out. People's social security numbers and social security numbers are unique to to the person, right? It's given so that the government can help keep track of your activities, right? So if people lose their social security numbers and people who are not the best take a hold of those security numbers, they could do a lot of things with your identity, right? Obviously, we already talked about birth dates and why those are important, but one thing we haven't discussed yet is addresses. Addresses, once it's given out to people who are you do not know, that is just very dangerous because when they know where you live, it could lead to a lot of dangerous and scary situations that you might run into. Simply no one wants to do that. Next one that they hacked into and got this information were people's driver's licenses. Well, it's not the worst thing in the area in to use and to lose. If people lose their driver's license, it has a lot of their personal information on there, such as their names, their addresses, their date of birth, their nationality, so on and so forth. So when people lose their driver license information, could lead to a lot more personal information being lost, right? And obviously, we already discussed credit card information being lost, and this affected with Equifax got their security breach. It affected around 147 million people. While these are not as big as Yahoo, 147 million people is still a lot, right? It's still a lot of people. All right. So now the next company we'll discuss is Uber. So Uber is a transportation company that helps people get from point A to point B, right? From one place to another. Now, this happened in 2016, where it lost about the names of a bunch of their clients, as well as the license plates and email addresses of a bunch of their drivers. And this affected 600,000 people. Now, you may be asking, Charles, all right, it doesn't seem as bad. The information is not as bad as, for example, losing your social security number. Well, that is true. The main reason that this is up here today is because it's the way that Uber handled it as a professional company. the way they handled it was considered very unprofessional because they did not inform the people who lost their information for a long time, right? And when you use a company's services, when something like this happens, you should get notified very soon and very quick, right? So when you do not get this kind of information notified to you, obviously that does not look good for the company running it. All right. So now, don't worry, don't be scared. Not every company has to deal with all this, but these are simply some examples of the security at a workplace being breached, right, and being breached. So that means we're going to talk about what are some good practical ways to have some good kinds of security where you work. So if you work in a building or a place where you physically have to go there to work, some of these are very important for you to have in order to have good security at your work. First thing, alarms. So having alarms that are set when things are closed, when people shouldn't be around, people going places they shouldn't be. When you have alarms, it will help people get notified that, hey, somebody is trying to break in and steal some information or steal some stuff from your company. So it's obviously very good to have alarms. Another thing that's very good to have is CCTV. We mentioned that earlier, that is video surveillance, right? When you have CCTV, you can catch the people committing the crimes on video. That way you can see everything that they take and hopefully get a positive ID on people committing the crime, so that you can be able to track them down and get back what is yours. The next one, have some security guards. Right? In a lot of places where maybe things are not safe, or if you have very expensive products or simply carry around a lot of money, it's good to have guards so that you can keep a less extra cushion of security so that people just can't run up on your business or run up on you and take the money, right? You have people to protect you. And something to have almost anywhere you go is to have passcodes, all right? So maybe having passcodes when you enter a place for work, that way just not everyone can get into the buildings. Having passcodes if you have personal computers you use for work, having passcodes to get into, like we mentioned earlier, the buildings and so forth. Having good secure passcodes are some good ways to have good security, right? That's something that everyone can do and everyone can have. So these are 4 good things of what kinds of security that are just generic and everyone should have. Now let's talk about a more in-depth aspect of security, and that is health security. All right, so a good way to have security, basically to keep healthy with your security. Number 1, have counseling. So basically have someone you can talk to, whether that's at your workplace where you have a counselor coming in once a week, twice a week, whatever it is. Have someone you can talk to. We weren't made to do life on our own. We are made to be able to do life with other people. Counseling actually does benefit a lot of people. Another thing you should have is probably insurance. So in case anything happens to you, your business, you personally, or anything, it's good to have insurance so that if something bad does happen to you or your business, you will be able to recover from that attack or damage that you will receive because you have insurance covering it. And one of the best ways to have health security is to have good training. Have good people training new employees in what they're supposed to do. Have them get trained in, for example, passcodes, know what they should and should not be able to do at the company. Those kind of things are super important so that you can keep a good amount of healthy security in your working life. All right. So one thing also, work has evolved a lot to online work. So how can we have some good online security? So have some updated software, right? So have some updated things such as updated firewalls, antiviruses, and browsing restrictions. So if you're at work and the computer is only provided at your workplace, it's good to have firewalls so that people cannot access it. Should not. It's also good to have antiviruses in case any bugs try to come into your computer and damage it. And it's also good to have some browsing restrictions so that people do not waste their time and honestly get into some bad stuff on work property, right? So when it comes to online security, like we mentioned earlier, it's becoming such a popular thing to do business or to do work online, right? Right now, we're discussing things online. So we have to have a good amount of online security in order to make sure our personal information just doesn't get leaked to the majority of the public. So let's do a quick summary of some of the terms we mentioned earlier in this presentation before we wrap up today's webinar. Number one is CCTV, which is video surveillance, right? Be able to record things that if things happen, you can be able to see it and tell the difference. Another good thing to have is a firewall, right? Have the good separated from the bad so that it does not run into each other. Have good updated passwords. You don't want people to be able to easily have access to your information. And a PIN is different from a password because it's just a group of numbers, while a password is any type of character. All right, remember that passwords are characters, PIN is just numbers. All right, and safety procedures are step-by-step safety measures you can take to make sure you have a good, safe environment. All right, so we're going to move on to something where you guys can do on your own is to be able to practice on your own, like we mentioned earlier. Go ahead and type in your web browser Intermediate Business English Lesson 41 Security at Work, and you'll be able to review some of the terms we talked about, some of the questions we discussed, so that you'll be able to practice things on your own. Like I mentioned earlier, I encourage you guys to practice so that information doesn't go in this ear and out the other, but you do our best to retain the information in our heads. All right, so we're gonna move on to a little Q&A part. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask that in the chat. But if you do not have any questions to ask, go ahead and please fill out these polls. This poll simply asks you the question, was the webinar useful? So this is poll number one, because that's what we want to know here at Tutlo. Was it useful? Did you learn something? Because that's the whole point of these presentations, is for you guys to learn something, right? So simply answer this question, was the webinar useful? Why or why not? I'll leave about another 20 seconds just to make sure everybody has a fair amount of time to fill out these polls and no one is left behind. All right, so that ends poll number one. And I'll just throw up one more poll and we'll be able to move on to the final stages of this presentation, guys. We're almost at the half-hour mark. Time really has flown by, but we're just going to wrap up. Make sure we wrap up on a good, positive note. All right, so now, poll number two asks you the question, do you want to participate in similar events in the future? Would you want to do other webinars so that we can know? Will we see you again on the Tutlo webinars? All right, simple yes or no question. I'll leave it up for about 10 to 15 seconds just so everybody has a good amount of time to make sure they do their best to fill into these poll results. All right, so thank you guys for filling out those results. Thank you guys for coming in. So before we hang up, I just want to encourage each and every one of you guys to make sure you check out Tutlo on social media. Social media is everywhere nowadays, so why don't we use it to benefit us when we're doing more to learn and to benefit our skills? So remember to follow Tutlo on Facebook, LinkedIn, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I really encourage you guys to keep in touch with the English community, because when you do that, you will have extra motivation. You will see that there are more people on the same journey as you, right? The English journey. And remember, we are all lifelong learners. We're not going to be perfect right away. But when we surround ourselves with people who want to achieve those goals, it will make us want to achieve those goals, all right? So from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you so much for coming into this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope you were able to take something from it and learn, because that's the whole point of these presentations. Like I mentioned, is to give you a different aspect of what you can learn from these presentations, all right? So, like I said before, my name is Charles Theodore Monk, and I am a Tutlo tutor, and I hope to see you guys again, whether that's through another presentation or through a private lesson on the Tutlo platform. So I hope everybody has a great rest of their week. Stay safe, and I hope to see you guys again soon. And remember, you all are lifelong learners. Do not get frustrated with your learning right now. you will all be able to achieve your goals with simply working hard. So everybody take care, and I'll see you guys again soon. Goodbye.